I was working a pizza delivery job at the time, eager to save up for the new PS4, which seemed to be the latest craze among my friends. I didn't mind working late into the night to make some extra money, and this particular evening was no exception. My delivery took me to a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of town. The address pointed to a seemingly tranquil suburban street. The houses were dimly lit, and the only sounds that broke the silence were the soft chirping of crickets. As I approached the house, I couldn't help but notice how eerily quiet it was. The darkness seemed to swallow the front yard, and the porch light was flickering ominously. I shook off the feeling of unease and approached the front door, clutching the 2 pizzas tightly in my hands. I rang the doorbell and waited, my breath forming wispy clouds in the chilly night air. After what felt like an eternity, the door creaked open slowly, revealing a dimly lit interior. A man stood in the doorway, his features obscured by the shadows. His voice was low and gravelly as he confirmed the order and took the pizzas from me. I couldn't see much of him, but his demeanor was unsettling. He seemed jittery, as if he were on edge. I tried to engage in some small talk to ease the awkwardness, but he simply mumbled a few words in response, his eyes darting around nervously. As I turned to leave, I heard a faint, unsettling sound from inside the house. It was a strange, almost inhuman noise, like a muffled whimper or a soft growl. I couldn't quite place it, but it sent shivers down my spine. I hurried back to my car, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong in that house. My instincts screamed at me to get away as quickly as possible. Just as I was about to drive off, something caught my eye. Upstairs, in one of the windows, I saw her, a frail, old woman. Her face was pallid, her eyes wide and unblinking. She stared directly at me with her mouth wide open, a grotesque caricature of a smile. She was tapping on the window, slowly but repeatedly, her bony fingers producing a chilling rhythm against the glass. I couldn't look away from her unnerving gaze, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. It was as if the night itself held its breath, waiting for something to happen. I finally tore my gaze away and sped off, my heart racing like a jackhammer. The image of that old woman, her hollow eyes and that haunting smile, was burned into my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had stumbled upon something deeply disturbing that night. I drove back to the pizza place in a daze, my thoughts a jumbled mess of fear and confusion. I couldn't stop replaying the encounter in my mind, trying to make sense of it. But deep down, I knew that some mysteries are better left unsolved, and some encounters are better left in the past. The following days were haunted by the memory of that unsettling delivery. I found it increasingly difficult to focus on my work, the image of the old woman's eerie smile etched into my thoughts. I tried to convince myself that it had all been a bizarre hallucination or a trick of the mind, but the unease remained. Sleep became a restless endeavor, as I found myself plagued by nightmares of that house and the old woman. Her tapping on the window seemed to echo in my dreams, a dissonant melody of dread. I couldn't escape the feeling that I had witnessed something otherworldly that night, something that defied rational explanation. I considered sharing my experience with friends or co-workers, hoping that they might provide some rational insight. But the fear of being labeled as superstitious or paranoid kept me silent. After all, who would believe such a bizarre tale? As the weeks passed, I gradually resumed my regular routine, pushing the memory of that eerie night to the recesses of my mind. But deep down, I knew that some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved, and some encounters are destined to haunt us for the rest of our lives. Funny enough, I've always been a huge fan of listening to narrated scary stories on YouTube. I'd spend hours lost in tales of eerie encounters and spine-chilling mysteries. Little did I know that one day, I'd have a story of my own to share, a story that unfolded when I was just 19 years old. It was a typical Friday night, and I was working my part-time job as a pizza delivery guy to make some extra cash. The pizzeria I worked for was known for its late-night deliveries, catering to all those hunger-stricken souls burning the midnight oil. I'd been on the job for a few months, and aside from the occasional odd customer or wrong address, everything had been relatively uneventful. That was until that fateful night. I still remember the address that popped up on the order screen. It was a place I'd been to before, a somewhat run-down neighborhood on the outskirts of town. The kind of place where the houses had seen better days, and the porch lights often flickered ominously. But hey, a delivery was a delivery, and tips were tips, so I didn't think twice as I grabbed the next delivery ticket and headed out. The drive to the house was uneventful, and I parked my beat-up old car in front of the address. That's when I started to feel that something was off. The house I was delivering to was in complete darkness, not a single light on inside or outside. It wasn't uncommon for customers to forget to turn on their porch lights, but this felt different. An eerie stillness hung in the air. I double-checked the address on my phone, confirming that I was indeed in the right place. With a sigh, I decided to go ahead and make the delivery. After all, it wasn't the first time I'd delivered to a dimly lit house. I grabbed the pizzas and headed up to the front door. Before I could even ring the doorbell, the door suddenly swung open. I wasn't greeted by a friendly customer, but by a chilling sight. Two men standing just inside the doorway, their faces concealed by menacing masks. My heart dropped, and I felt a knot of fear tightening in my chest. One of the masked figures was holding a baseball bat, and the other had what looked like a knife glinting ominously in the faint light that spilled out from the house's interior. Panic surged through me as I realized I'd stumbled into a robbery, something straight out of a horror movie. They didn't waste any time. With gruff, menacing voices, they demanded the pizzas and my money. I could feel the cold, hard steel of their intentions pressing against my back. I didn't dare defy them, so I handed over the pizza bags and the meager cash I had in my pocket. As they backed away into the shadows of the house, my legs moved on their own, propelling me backward and away from that dreadful scene. My heart pounded, and my mind raced as I scrambled back to my car, desperately hoping they wouldn't chase me. I sped back to the pizzeria, my heart still racing like a jackhammer. I immediately called the police and explained what had happened. They assured me that they'd send officers to check it out, but when they arrived at the address, the house was empty. The two robbers had vanished without a trace. The whole experience left me shaken to my core. I couldn't help but think about how close I'd come to real danger that night, how easily things could have taken a turn for the worse. It was a stark reminder that sometimes, real life can be just as terrifying as the stories I used to listen to on YouTube. Now, here I am, sharing my own creepy encounter. The irony isn't lost on me, from avid listener to reluctant participant. It's a story I'll never forget, a reminder that the world can be a much darker and scarier place than we sometimes realize. My name is Alex, and I've been delivering pizzas for Uncle Tony's Pizzeria for the past 2 years. It's not the most glamorous job, but it pays the bills while I finish up my degree. Over the years, I'd heard my fair share of eerie tales from fellow delivery drivers, but nothing could have prepared me for the horrifying experience that awaited me one stormy Friday night. It was raining cats and dogs as I navigated through the dark, winding streets of the city in my old, beat-up Toyota. My phone's GPS led me to an address that seemed like it was straight out of a horror movie, 413 Elm Street. The neighborhood had a notorious reputation, but the promise of generous tips kept me going. As I pulled up to 413 Elm, my headlights revealed a house that appeared as if it had been forgotten by time itself. Windows were boarded up, and the front yard was a jungle of overgrown weeds. A shiver ran down my spine, but I couldn't let the rain-soaked pizza go cold. I gathered my courage and approached the house. Just as I reached the doorstep, the creaky front door swung open, revealing a dimly lit, decrepit interior. Standing in the doorway was a middle-aged man with disheveled hair and a sinister grin on his face. His eyes gleamed with an unsettling excitement. "About time you got here," he said, his voice dripping with an eerie cheerfulness. I handed over the pizza, and he responded with an unusually large tip. It seemed generous, but there was something off about the whole situation that sent shivers down my spine. "Thanks," I muttered, trying to hide my unease. As I turned to leave, he gripped my arm tightly, his fingers digging into my flesh. "Wait," he said, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "I've got something for you." He disappeared into the dimly lit house and returned moments later, clutching a small, intricately carved wooden box adorned with peculiar symbols and patterns. "I want you to have this," he said, pressing the mysterious box into my hands. "It's a family heirloom. Keep it safe." My confusion and discomfort deepened, but I accepted the box and stammered out another thanks before making a hasty exit. As I walked back to my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly amiss with the man and his eerie gift. Little did I know that this seemingly innocent pizza delivery would mark the beginning of a nightmare I could never have imagined. Hello everyone, thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you did enjoy it, I would appreciate if you would like the video and subscribe to the channel. It would help out a heap. Remember to look out for one another and stay safe. It is a strange world we live in after all.